Good evening, everyone. We're so excited to have all of you guys here for the Oakland County Climate Campaign webinar on teaching climate change. I'm Heather Chen. I'm a senior at Bloomfield Hills High School and one of the hub coordinators for Sunrise Movement Oakland County, and I am going to be moderating tonight. But before we get started, I want to hand it over to one of our members, Annalisa, to talk a little bit about the Oakland County Climate Campaign.
Right. Hello, everyone. My name is Annalisa Hazelby. I'm just going to share my screen really quick, and we are going to talk about our organization. So yeah, we are the Oakland County Climate Campaign by the Turn Oakland County Green Coalition. This is our website, turnoaklandcountygreen.com. Just a little bit about myself. I'm actually a chapter leader for Citizens Climate Lobby, but I also do a lot of work outside of Citizens Climate Lobby, such as Turn Oakland County Green, and volunteer with this organization to help put on webinars and do other events as well. So who we are. So we are a coalition of a bunch of different people from throughout the county that are really trying to see the county act and really trying to see the county act on more sustainable levels and more actions that are enforcing sustainability. And so we're members from the Sierra Club, the Michigan League of Conservation Voters, Clean Water Action, NAACP, Michigan Climate Action Network, Transit Riders United, Sunrise Movement, Rochester Riders, and Citizens Climate Lobby. So we're all just concerned citizens who really want to see the county make a difference. So what do we believe? That we need to act here. Oakland County can definitely be a climate leader and help move our local cities and the state and the forward. We need to act now. Every day that we pour emissions into the atmosphere, we blight our future and our children's future. And our climate action must also address injustice. It should protect frontline and poor communities from extreme heat, flooding, and other climate change effects by upgrading water and other infrastructure. So what we want for Oakland County is to reduce and eliminate greenhouse gas emissions by the county's own buildings and operations and throughout the county, to improve public transit, and transition to electric transportation, support bike lanes, and improve walkability throughout the county. We also want to create a climate resilience plan addressing stormwater, septic, habitat restoration, and native plants. We work with unions and job training programs to bring green businesses, jobs, and training where it's most needed. And we also create environmental justice with affordable clean water, affordable clean public transit, distributed renewable energy in low-income neighborhoods, energy efficiency, and heat relief programs. So far, we agreed on a 2020 climate jobs and justice platform. The organization itself is just a couple years old. We organized meetings and lobbied with the county executive, Dave Coulter, as well as county commissioners, and we just met with our new county sustainability officer, Erin Cattell. So Dave Coulter committed the county to net zero greenhouse gas emissions in the county operations by 2030 and countywide net zero emissions by 2050. And county commissioners adopted an interim goal of 50% reduction in emissions countywide by 2035. And hired the county sustainability officer, Erin Cattell, and funded planning of sustainability and emissions reductions, which all of these things are things that we have done in the past few years that we've been together. So, and we've also had a county commissioner help institute a native plant program and native tree planting to benefit habitat and ecosystems, which I've actually participated in, and it's a great program. In the spring, they give out the county gives out free native plants to plant in your own yard. So some things that some actions that we can take now. Email and call your county commissioner to use funds coming from the federal government to build back greener by creating and promoting sustainable transportation, investing in energy efficiency in low-income communities, making county operations net zero for greenhouse gases, and protecting and improving infrastructure for affordable clean water, free of pollutants for all. And you can find out who your commissioner is by visiting this link. I will put it in the chat after I'm done with my presentation. But yeah, we really strive to, lobby to our county commissioners to let them know our voices and what our concerns are as far as environmentalism. And so if you're interested in helping us or being involved with our efforts, definitely green.com to just you can call them or you can actually meet with them as well. But if you're more involved in joining our team, click on this link here and then enter in your information, and then you can register with us there. So.
Thank you so much for that, Annalisa. So our webinar tonight is focused on climate literacy in K-12 education. And I just want to take a moment to talk about why this topic is so important to me. As a young person that's involved with climate activism, I am almost always thinking about the fertility of my future. Actually, in this moment, is on day 6 of their hunger strike outside of the White House. Throughout my life, I have been constantly aware of the threat of change. My most distinct memory of elementary school is of me giving a speech to my 3rd grade class about the importance of renewable energy. So as an activist, I've had this opportunity to meet hundreds of other kids from across the country, and it's made me aware that I am very fortunate to have had supportive parents and friends who taught me about science and environmentalism. Even within the members of my Sunrise Hub, we've faced major differences in our climate educations, even though we only go to schools that might be 5 miles apart. Some of us had entire science units about climate change at school, while others never discussed it at all. And in other cases, students learn about climate change, but then they get left in this really anxious vacuum as they struggle to find ways to take action. Young people have the most to lose in this fight for the future, so it's imperative that we not only teach them about climate change, but prepare them to fight this crisis. So tonight we have an amazing panel of speakers who are going to lead us through this conversation as we discuss how we can fight climate change in our schools. We have Professor Debra Rowe, Mr. Joshua Barclay, and Representative Regina Weiss. Each of them will be giving a presentation, and afterwards we will open the floor to questions. So first up we have Mrs. Debra Rowe.
Hi, everybody. Really glad to be here. So nice to be able to do a presentation in my own home area. I started out this morning at 6:30 in the morning, giving a presentation at the University of Glasgow to about 85 faculty there. And it's so nice to see Josh again and to be able to share this information with you. I love the presentations that we started with tonight. I think you both are right on with what we need to do. I do hope that you'll put into the chat those links to those websites, because they were really hard to see as just a shared screen, and I will be doing the same. So let me just give you a little bit of background. So I was born in Detroit, grew up in Southfield, graduated from Southfield Lathrop, and then went off and went to Yale, came back, did my graduate school at University of Michigan, And I started out working for a solar company, doing energy audits as well as installing solar. We did a lot of senior citizen complexes where we saw people who were choosing between heating and eating. So we knew we needed to change that. And then I opened a division for them, for their company, sat on their board of directors, opened up my own solar company and energy auditing firm, did retail and wholesale. And then I went to the college, Oakland Community College. I said, you need a program. There's all sorts of do-it-yourselfers in this town. They need to know what they can do to reduce their pollution and to be more cost effective in how they use energy and to have healthier homes. And they said, sure, try it. So I started a program. I was told by US Department of Energy, I'm in my 43rd year now, so the oldest ongoing courses in renewable energies in the country. And we can be proud of that in Oakland County, but then we also help to start other colleges and universities across the country and now across the world, start their programs in sustainability and in a multidisciplinary way and with a lot of community partnerships. So we finished a global guidance document on how to create an inclusive and green workforce. We've written a lot about how you go get that green and sustainability job that you want. And so I've just got a few sites that I want to share with you today. We also run networks of 60 national higher ed associations, and we have a whole K-12 sector team. So let me just share a few things with you today, and then I'll be glad to talk more about how you can be an effective change agent to create the kind of system change that we need so we can build a more sustainable future for all. And if you're teaching K-12, one of the first things I tell you or running a community group, spend time learning about what the positive possibilities are for this species on this planet. Do not sit in doom and gloom. Sitting in worry, anxiousness, it doesn't feel good and it's a waste of time. It doesn't get you towards the solutions. When you're engaging in solutions, then you feel better. And no, we cannot eliminate climate change. It's already baked in, but we can work on how bad it's going to be. And we can work on reducing unnecessary, massive human suffering. And it's very important that we put that time in now. But I don't want you to do it with anxiety. I want you to do it with self-care, care about yourself as passionately as you care about these issues. And I want you to do it with a vision for what's possible and make that vision contagious to others. So if you care about this, and you must because you showed up today, you are part of an enormous number of people, millions of people all over this planet, hundreds of millions, who are all working on these issues. You've got lots of company. So if you feel isolated where you are, and I live in Livingston County right now, so we've got people who are like climate deniers, and they're like survivalists, and they're like, you know, there's some stuff going on here in Livingston County, but I engage with people. You can find common ground even when you're across the political spectrum. And I'll give you tools to do that so that we can build a more sustainable future for all. But let me share some sites, okay? So I'm going to start out with this one. I happen to have a nonprofit organization. I started it because the United Nations had a decade of education for sustainable development. They were asking all the countries, what are you doing in terms of sustainable development? And the White House wasn't responding. So a group of scientists, including myself, put together this US partnership for education for sustainable development. And I was very lucky to be able to be called from a bunch of international conferences saying, will you come tell us the good things that are going on in the US? So you can see kind of what we live by, living within environmental limits, achieving a sustainable economy, promoting good governance using sound science in a responsible way, and ensuring a healthy and just society. We've got all sorts of resources here, but I want to point you out first to take action. By the way, everybody at the US partnership, we've got like 360 partner organizations. All work at the core of the US partnership is pro bono. It's done by volunteers. And so the first one I want to show you is be a change maker. If you're not sure what kind of a change maker you are, you can come here and you will get your hands on a change maker quiz that comes from the Story of Stuff, and also 42 videos from 9 countries of people who are being change makers, in this case, in the area of sea level rise. So it'll give you a lot of positive stories that you can share, and it also helps your young students see themselves as change makers in the world. The second thing that I want to tell you about is that young people can make a difference in terms of policy. So if we have time, I'll show this to you later, but I will put this link in the chat for you. It's a wonderful video about how young people can change the votes of policymakers. In fact, 3 of my students a couple decades ago changed the vote of one senator in Michigan that helped to get passed the solar bank bill. It was a great program, and that vote wouldn't have been there if my 3 students hadn't called. This page also shows how you can communicate with your policymaker. It's not enough to talk about how voting is important and democracy is great in certain ways, because it allows us to elect people. We don't live in a military coup setting like is going on in some other countries in Sudan now, for example. It gives them even scripts that they can use, and it gives them connections to organizations that are working on solar, wind, not using natural gas as the transition, but going all the way to clean energy, and a lot more. And also a listing of youth climate movements as well. Sunrise, which is one of the ones you've already heard about. Now, going back to the US partnership, if you click on resources, for those of you who are interested in getting a job, if you click on higher ed and then you scroll down, you'll see my article that was featured on the front page of Career Advisor magazine of the 3 ways to get a green or sustainability job. But I'm not going to spend time on that right now. I'm going to instead click on this K-12 sector, and we have a page, and I can't tell you it's super up to date. It maybe could use some updating. We've been real busy with other things lately, like trying to get the budget reconciliation passed. But it's got standards for teaching about sustainability. It's got all sorts of free resources and organizations, case studies, learning activities, etc. So I encourage you to take a look at that site. Once again, I'll put all of these links in the chat. Anytime you're teaching any subject, you can also include the teaching about sustainability and potential solutions to create a more sustainable future for all. So if you haven't seen it yet, another site I think is worth sharing is the Race to Zero. This is an international initiative, and it's got people from all the different sectors of our society on how do we get rid of the pollution that we're causing that is creating climate change. And so there's lots of resources there. You can see there's over 700 cities and 3,000 businesses, 622 higher ed institutions that have been the lead on this, but lots of useful tools there for you. Then this is a collection of how you can teach about climate and energy. And I'm not a fan of everything in here, but I'm a fan of some of the things that are here. And so I think it's worthwhile looking at the collection that's there for teachers who want to include things on climate and energy. And that was put together by a lot of great people. And I just got to give a shout out to Mike Berkowitz. So nice to see you in here and all the good work that you do. Okay, so Change the Chamber. This is a student-led campaign that we have to try to get the climate policies that we need, and also call out the US Chamber of Commerce as a group that says it represents businesses, but it's really representing more the fossil fuel interests, definitely not the clean energy industries like renewables and energy efficiency. And so we've got on this site, it's run by students. Let me show you the coalition. It's made up of over 100 student groups across the world. All of these different groups sent their logos to us and have participated. So you can see a lot of the youth climate organizations in there, and it goes on and on. And then we've got about 40 people on our core team, and you'll just see some of the pictures here. We have 12 active teams. We meet every day, and we're working with policymakers. We've had about 60 meetings with senators and House reps. We have a very active social media. We've had over 100 million feeds on social media, and we also have the facts. We have the facts about how the US Chamber of Commerce, by the way, under investigation by a House committee, and there will be hearings this week about this. Them and the oil companies were called in to share and explain why they've been spreading disinformation about climate. But if you notice on here, we look at their lobbying, their lack of transparency, their litigation, where they're supporting fossil fuel interests instead of a sustainable future, their control of politicians. They actually fund people to get into office who are then climate deniers and obstructors. And you can also see the reports that we've done. We got wonderful coverage in a bunch of different media outlets about that, and you can read about the media outlets under media. I'd like to point to the Take Action. You can sign up to be part of the weekly newsletter. We have a weekly social media storm that you can be a part of. We also are telling corporate leaders that it's time for them to lobby for climate. We point out those who are already doing it, and we call out those who aren't. So we regularly send letters to the chief executives of 62 corporations and who say they're climate friendly, and we point out their hypocrisy that they're not lobbying for climate. And then we also have other pages, like some of you may have heard right now that Senator Manchin says he cares about climate, but he's not acting on that. So we have a page that really focuses on that as well. So I encourage you to go explore our website, to click on the Take Action page, and to take the steps here. We also have a script that you can use to call out the policymakers that are still in the way. And it even has got what to say, or you can, of course, put it in your own words. And we've got an easy to use script for you. And we've got a list of the key policymakers who still need to be convinced. So there you go. So there's a bunch of ways that you can take action. Just a couple of other things I'll be done. And that is that Detroit already has a climate action plan. I sat on a committee with the auto companies, the other higher ed institutions, Detroit Edison, believe it or not, and other main institutions in the city. And so whatever we do in Oakland County, we should coordinate with what's going on in Detroit. There's a lot. And I think if we collaborate, we'll be able to get more done in a more effective way. There's also wonderful justice organizations. Here's Detroiters Working for Environmental Justice. I've spent years working with them. They've got a toxins tour, a solar stories of Detroit. So a good group to connect with, and ask them to connect you with the other environmental and social justice groups that are so active in Detroit. And then if you want to do things on your own home, there's a wonderful Michigan Save program that's been set up. It provides financing so that you can pay for it from your savings and your utility bills while you're reducing your pollution. And you can also go to the Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association. This is a group that'll teach you about how to go solar, and they've got all sorts of wonderful activities. And so you can go ahead and check into that as well. So I'll put all of those links into the chat, and I'll look forward to answering your questions later on.
Thank you so much. That was really informational and inspirational. And I really loved your emphasis on focusing on the good and the positive potential when teaching climate education. I think that makes the topic so much more approachable for young people. So next up, we have Mr. Joshua Barclay, who is a former physics teacher at West Bloomfield Hills High School and the 2016 Michigan Science Teacher of the Year. He's going to take us through a case study of his work with the Environmental Club at West Bloomfield Hills High School and in our schools.
Thank you. I've just got to do a password here, sorry. And hopefully y'all can see this. Can you guys see the shared screen there?
Yes, we can see it, but I don't think it's not in present mode yet.
Okay, cool. I'm just going to get rid of this, hide the floating meeting controls, and hide this. Okay, great. Hi, everyone, and thanks to Debra for all those great resources. And I would like to remind everyone that there's so many things you can do. Sometimes just doing one thing is really all that's necessary. I'm going to also let you know just this project was done really at the peak of my career. So it may seem like, wow, I'll never be able to do all that stuff. You really don't need to. Even just one of these things I'm going to bring up might be something good for you. So I'm going to first hide the floating meeting control so you can see this. The presentation I'm giving today is entitled Climate Literacy Through Student-Driven Solar. And really the focus was trying to get the students to take all the actions here. Entire presentation, and anything you see in this light green is a clickable link. You'll be able to get this whole presentation. I'll give this again at the end. I would like to point out though that the driving force behind this was the West Bloomfield High School Environmental Club that was called EARTH, for Environmentally Aware and Ready to Help. And this presentation is a case study of how West Bloomfield High School EARTH Club powered the WBHS Science Department with solar electricity and engaged over 100 students in climate action by leveraging STEAM, the 4 C's, and newly available financing options. And STEAM here means science, tech, engineering, arts, and mathematics, where 4 C's represent communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity, which are certainly all skills that our students are going to need for the 21st century. Now, to just do the non-edubabble version of that one, really this is all about how students taught themselves science, engineering, arts, math, computer science, video production, writing, research, and more by installing a 20 kilowatt solar array. And I'm a real advocate for actually just taking action, and the learning will automatically come with that. And this presentation should show you how to do that. The first thing we had to do was do an energy audit of the science department. Before you can install solar, to know how much, you'll have to know how much energy you're using. And I also would like to point out that the high school physics objectives for next generation science standards do not directly address climate, but they do have energy flow processes in there. So which objectives you can use to teach about climate. And in general, if you're going to do any kind of solar project, you do need to look at efficiency first because it's such a low investment with high returns. The energy audit that my students did consisted of plugging in every electric device in the entire science department at the high school into one of these kilowatt meters, which tells you how much power something uses. Now, we first recorded the power while every device was off, and it turns out that about 10% of energy is used while devices are off. So that's something to strongly consider. And then we recorded the power that devices were using while they were on. This particular device being measured was a Promethean projector, a smart board. Then what we did was we put all this information in a spreadsheet. Students interviewed teachers to see how much time they typically used these devices and how long they were plugged in. And if once I give you the link for this, you can actually click this link to get your own energy audit done. We took these reams of data that we had, and I handed it over to an AP Physics student who did this fantastic summary. And this is actually, I stole this from the EARTH Club's presentation to the Board of Ed. I'll just give you a brief overview of what this is saying right here. All the devices that we found in the science department are listed right here with these different colors, and you can see in these bars, these stacked bars, that first of all, overhead lights are using by far the most amount of energy, but you can see the amounts that these other devices are using. And very importantly, the student took the production of our proposed solar array, and that's what this line is right here, and showed that if the district was willing to install LED lighting and give teachers control over the lighting so they could dim light or turn different sections of the class on or off, we could actually have the energy use of the science department lower than the proposed solar energy production. So that was the first thing. The second thing we had to do was a solar resource study. Basically, where to put a solar array on campus. And to do this, we used a device called a solar pathfinder. It just shows you how much of the sky is blocked in a location. I'm actually going to let a student tell you how they did this.
We use the solar pathfinder tool, which is just a tool you can just set on the ground somewhere outside and then see where the sun would go and how much sunlight that spot would get. So using that tool, we can see at different locations around the school how much solar energy each part would be able to generate. And through that, we can decide where would be the most optimal location.
We compiled the findings of our Solar Pathfinder study into this OneNote notebook, which we've made available online at bit.ly/WBHS Solar Planning. Our first step was to look at a satellite view of our school through Google Maps and make a broad estimate of the places where a solar array might be feasible, looking at both whether there's any trees or other objects blocking the area, and also how easily it could be connected with the existing electrical infrastructure. We then went out to each individual area and took detailed pictures of a solar pathfinder along with the surrounding area. And by looking at the proportion on the pathfinder blocked from the sky, you can measure how much sunlight
So
the
that's
area
just a little bit of
received over
an
the course of the
overview
year.
of that part of the project. We also had multiple student presentations, and for me, this truly was the heart and soul of our entire project. I call it climate advocacy using the 4 Seasons theme, and I have actually stolen a bunch of my students' presentation slides that I'll share with you, but we did over 16 formal student presentations which were delivered to potential donors. Here was our presentation to Jason Bing of the Ecology Center, to community organizations including the Board of Education. Here's my students presenting to the Board of Ed, to stakeholders such as the community at large. Right over here, we're presenting at our ribbon cutting ceremony, showing the solar power curve right there. We also gave presentations to elementary school students who took a field trip out to our array when it was completed. And we also presented to legislative bodies. Here's my students presenting to the Michigan Public Service Commission, and we also testified at the Michigan State Senate about distributed energy. And here I've stolen a couple of slides. These slides were taken from the students' presentation to the West Bloomfield Educational Foundation. Just wanted to show you some of the quality of the stuff these kids are producing. Here, of course, is the hockey stick graph, which just shows that how, starting around 1850 or 1900, the amount of CO2, that's the blue line in our atmosphere, just skyrocketed, and it was followed by the temperature, which is shown by the red line there, also skyrocketing. Here was our future CPAs and future fiduciaries and financial analysts who did this slide, the calculation of the possible financial savings to the school. They had to take the averaged annualized cost of electricity, and they had to do calculations including determining how much energy every kilowatt of solar installed would produce. Taking that ratio, we figured out that a 20 kilowatt system would produce 24,000 kilowatt hours of energy per year, and then that would actually save the school district $2,600 per year, saving a total of $65,000 for the school district over the life of the array. This is my favorite slide because the kids, and this amazingly to me, I did not help them with this, they did this themselves, they really from scratch wanted to calculate how much carbon dioxide was released by generating a kilowatt hour of electricity from coal. So they had to take the embodied energy of coal, multiply that by the power plant efficiency, and then determine the total energy output. It turns out to be that 370 grams of coal will produce 1 kilowatt hour of electricity. And then they had to institute some chemistry here, taking the empirical formula for bituminous coal combustion, and then using some stoichiometry, determined that every kilowatt hour will add 2.5 pounds of CO2 to the atmosphere, and that by installing a 20 kilowatt array, we can prevent 60,000 pounds of CO2 yearly. Now, yeah, the students could have just Googled that, but it's so much more valuable to them to be able to figure this out from scratch. This is my favorite slide in the whole thing. A next part of our project, you might think, oh, this is all science and math, but really there was so much more to it, including student artwork and design. Really, maybe this was the most important part, as you will see. We had a student in his engineering class design a solar panel mounting bracket for a roof mount. We ended up using a ground mount, so we didn't use this, but still valuable practice and skills for the students to learn. Some of the Earth Club kids made an infographic. This is way better than anything I could produce. And this actually allowed us to not only honor some of our sponsors that we had early, but to develop these different levels of giving and start with an early conception of how we're going to make a commemorative plaque to donors. The final commemorative plaque was actually produced by a student, again, way better than I could have ever done. Here's the actual design right here. I thought that was fantastic. And here it is down here, actually mounted, printed on aluminum and mounted right next to our finished solar array. Other stuff that we had was the Earth Club website. This was designed, authored, and coded by students and allowed us to provide a place for information, for the blog that told the story of what we were doing, a way for people to donate and monitor the progress of our project, and also connections to the social media of the club. We had multiple student-produced videos. My favorite of these is the My Solar School video entry. You did see a little section of that earlier, but when we submitted this to the My Solar School contest, we won first place. So real video production skills gained, and we actually gained quite a bit of money for our project from that. This may be my favorite piece of art here, though. This was a student artist conception in 2017 of what the array might look like. And I'm just going to fade this into the actual array. It is striking. And I'll go back to the student conception here, how if you can envision it, you are more likely, in my belief, to actually make it happen. So I thought that was a really good step in the process. The fundraising aspect, just as a time saver, I'm going to skip over this, except for one thing. If you do want to know how we raised our $25,000, I'm happy to share all these different we try to do sustainable fundraising for this. I'm glad to share that later if you're interested. The one thing I did want to share was something that's very applicable for English writing, essay writing classes. We had students write our grant applications. Now, in this process, I maybe did more editing than I would have had to if I had just written the grant applications myself. However, I think the students got a lot out of this. One thing we definitely got out of it is the learning that, you know, if you apply for grants, you are going to lose most of them. So that's an important lesson, you know, even though it may not feel good for the students, but it's reality. What we did finally do was, towards the end of our project, we actually started winning some of these grants with student-written applications. All these links, you could actually see the applications they wrote there when I share with you the way to get this whole presentation. In 2 years, here's the bottom line, in 2 years we had raised $25,000, which seems like a lot. The downside was that the bids that we had received for a 20 kilowatt array ranged from 50K to 70K. So what to do? Do we need to raise money for another 2 years? Is this ever going to happen? Well, as it turns out, we were saved by what I call the miracle funding mechanism. Most people do not know about this, and this is something relatively new that that everyone needs to know about. It's called a solar lease or a power purchase agreement, PPA for short. Once you get this downloaded, you can click there. That goes into detail about the subtle difference between a solar lease and a power purchase agreement. It's not important for this presentation, but basically what this means is that your school can right now get solar energy installed with $0 of upfront costs. I will repeat, zero upfront. And then even after that, you will pay less per kilowatt hour than you pay your utility for regular dirty electricity. This seems too good to be true. And when I tell people about this, it usually takes a couple of minutes for me to fully explain it because people just don't believe it. Now, how is this even possible? You can not pay anything and pay less per kilowatt hour. It is because solar is now the cheapest form of energy in history. I got this from the Visual Capitalist. Most people are still in a mindset of 2009 or so, where in fact, yes, in 2009, solar was the most expensive form of energy. But now, because of technology advancement, it is currently, this is from 2020, and even more so in 2021, it is now the cheapest form of energy available. And you got to ask, why is DTE still running 50% of the energy generation from coal when they could save so much from installing solar? So we may have to take this into our own hands, and we do. So a PPA, a power purchase agreement, costs the school zero and saves instantly. Here's a typical example. You pay nothing for installation. The school pays less per kilowatt hour than the utility charges. You start saving from day one. There's no investment. You just start saving, you pay less. For our PPA, it was actually a solar lease, about the same thing. We got a 10% discount per solar kilowatt hour. In other words, the energy that was our solar array generated during the lease period, we were guaranteed to pay 10% less than whatever we were being charged by the utility at that moment. It's guaranteed 10% less for the entire length of the lease. The installer also does all the system maintenance. You don't have to worry about any of that. Something goes wrong, that's the installer's job to fix that and get you some more energy, because they lose money if you don't get your energy. It reduces electricity costs immediately, and of course it reduces climate emissions, and it really provides a tremendous educational opportunity. Now, I've got some links to some PPA and solar lease providers that are available in Michigan. This is still a pretty new thing. There's only a couple of installers that'll do this, but I to hook you up with some of them. I'm not getting paid by any of them. I'm just eager to have solar installed. Now, we had $25,000. What to do with that? Give it back to the donors? We didn't want to do that. So what we did was we used the money for a type of lease called an up. Just to compare, if we had just bought a solar array, 20 kilowatts would have cost us about $60,000. With this upfront buyout option, what it does is, again, we're only paying 90% of what the district was paying per kilowatt hour, but what the upfront buyout did for us, it allowed us to, instead of a 25-year lease, we're able to reduce a 6-year lease, and then the school owns the array after the lease ends, meaning the school gets free electricity for the rest of the life of the array. And these arrays can, they're typically warranted for 25 years, but they can last 40 or 50 years. There are still arrays from the 70s that are still working. Our cost was $22,000 for 20 kilowatts. Again, you can pay zero if you want, but we got a much better deal, more kilowatt hours, more energy for less overall cost by doing it this way. Again, you don't have to have an upfront buyout. You can just do a straight PPA, straight solar lease, where you just pay zero upfront. So this is why it's especially good for schools and other public institutions that don't pay taxes, because the installer gets the tax benefits, but the school immediately pays less for electricity. So the installation, I'm just going to let the video do the talking here. And our installer, Third House Energy, was kind enough to allow our students to get involved. We chose a ground mount so the students can get involved. They have issues, if you do it on the roof, insurance issues might prevent students from getting up there. But when the students walk by this thing, they're very, very happy to see it. And every time they walk by this array on Oakland Lake Road, stop climate change. So, in conclusion here, if you want to find out what's going on right now, you could click this link and find out how much energy our solar array is generating right now. And we also, during COVID, we used the opportunity to help other schools with a grant program, Go Solar. Bog School in Detroit, we gave them a startup grant, and they actually have gotten it matched and are now being able to install an array for themselves. If you'd like to contact me, here's my information. The one thing that I will put in the chat is this presentation is available online, and you can click all the links at bit.ly/Barclay is my name, -TOCG, which is for Turn Oakland County Green. The reason why you might want to download this is that it includes bonus hints, how-tos, all the fundraising methods, and even a solar curriculum aligned with the next generation science standards, as well as video documentation of our project. Thanks for listening, folks, and I'm eager to hear everyone's questions after our last presenter.
That was so awesome. Makes me really hyped to get students at my school doing something as well. Thank you so much for that, Mr. Barclay. Finally, we have Representative Regina Weiss, who's going to talk about current climate education legislation and her experience as a legislator and educator.
Thank you, Heather. And first of all, Mr. Barclay, round of applause to you, because that was amazing. No surprise here why you were awarded Educator of the Year. That's remarkable, all the work that you did. And I'm sorry to everyone in advance for having to follow that, because my presentation is not nearly as exciting, but I do promise it will be brief, if nothing else, so that we can quickly get to questions. So my name is I'm State Representative Regina Weiss. I represent Michigan's 27th district, which includes the communities of Barclay, Ferndale, Oak Park, Huntington Woods, Pleasant Ridge, Royal Oak Township, and Hazel Park. I am also a former educator. So I came to the legislature after having taught in the Detroit Public Schools district, teaching high school social studies and English. And so I'm very excited, education is one of my #1 passions, and the environment is right up there as well. And so I'm very excited to be here speaking tonight. We already established, Debra did a really great job establishing how important this issue is of dealing with climate change and addressing climate change. Obviously, Heather and Annalisa and everyone else involved, you guys are already doing the talk. You can get more engaged and involved and be a little bit more proactive. Josh did a great job at illustrating very specifically how he worked with his students to do something concrete to improve his school, that project over the course of many years, which touched so many lives and is going to impact that district moving forward. But there are some things that I just want to make sure that everyone knows about. If you're looking for some things that you can get involved with right now in terms of advocating for some of this climate legislation that's happening in Lansing. So obviously a lot of the work that you all are doing is at the county level. And we all are paying very close attention to a lot of the things that are happening right now at the federal level in terms of some legislation that could potentially impact financing for both a lot of different programs, but including being able to impact and combat climate change. But at the state level, we have some legislation that's going on right now that I want to make sure everyone knows about, and want to make sure everyone knows how they can share their voice and have an impact in helping get some of these bills hopefully to have a hearing, and some of these bills, including one that has a hearing on Wednesday, how you can lend your voice to help make sure that that legislation gets across the finish line. So there are a couple ones. Obviously, we're talking about education and teaching about climate change. And there is one bill that could really help impact that at the state level, and that is House Bill 5283. That is establishing standards for environmental literacy in Michigan. And so this bill, introduced by Representative Julie Rogers, who is the state rep from Kalamazoo, would create an environmental literacy task force with the goal of developing model curriculum on environmental literacy, which, Mr. Barclay, if this bill gets across the finish line, I definitely want you on this task force. So we'll definitely have to connect offline. It would also create that model curriculum. It would, and it would be a way to help districts to ensure that they are actually providing these important resources for their students, that they're teaching their students about these issues and empowering them in ways that we've already discussed this evening, for things that concrete things that they can do to actually impact and mitigate climate change. I also wanted to point out that there is another bill at the national level, just so people know about it, called the Climate Change Education Act, that was introduced by Edward Barclay, who's a senator from Massachusetts, as well as one of our own Congress people here in Michigan, Congresswoman Debbie Dingell, to expand climate change education at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And so that's happening at the national level. We have this bill at the state level. Unfortunately, this bill is just sitting in committee, which is something that happens a lot of times in Lansing, where something gets introduced, but it's up to the chair of the committee to actually give the bill a hearing, and the chair could just choose to never do that. And so right now, this bill is sitting in committee. And so I would encourage anyone who is passionate about this and would like to see this work being done to reach out to our education committee chairperson and the vice chair and the minority vice chair to ask for that bill to get a hearing. I'm not gonna try to type while I'm talking, but I can put their names in the chats later. But I will tell you that the chair of the Education Committee is Representative Pamela Hornberger. The vice chair is Representative Brad Paquette. And then the minority vice chair is Representative Darren Camilleri. So I can put their email in in the chat a little bit later, but I would encourage you to reach out to them and advocate to give this bill a hearing. There is another bill, and this one's really exciting because this actually does have a hearing, and it has a hearing on Wednesday in the Energy Committee. And it's actually two bills, a set of bills, House Bill 4715 and 4716, introduced by Representatives Hood and Hoytinga. And I'm actually a co-sponsor on both of these bills. And these bills would create a community solar program in Michigan, which is something we don't currently have. So Mr. Barclay pointed out all the things that you could do at your school to help ensure that you have access to solar energy, and just doing it just within your school itself, which is amazing. And I encourage everyone to do that. What community solar is a way to allow lots of different people to get together and invest in solar. So it could be a group of municipalities, school districts, individual residents who maybe can't afford or don't have the ability to install solar panels themselves, but together can combine their resources to invest in and utilize renewable solar energy through these smaller operations that typically utilize about 25 acres of land. So a typical solar farm for a large utility such as DTE or consumers could utilize up to hundreds of acres of land potentially. These smaller farms are ways that can help. They can also help farmers diversify their income and utilize underused or underperforming land. And again, it allows people to kind of get together and pool their resources, and they don't have to wait on their utility company to do it. So this is empowering the consumers to make those choices, which right now, unfortunately, in our neck of the woods, you're either DTE or consumers, or you've gone around and done your own independent solar on your own. This would allow people to kind of get together and co-opt that energy as a larger group of folks. So this would also, and this is something that I think is really important because we haven't talked a lot about this, climate change, because it is inevitable and we can't do anything to stop it. We can mitigate it, but it's still happening and we're seeing the results of it right now. Reliability of energy is a huge issue, and we've seen that in our area with a lot of these storms that have come through. And so having that access to solar energy will also help increase the reliability of the grid when there are storms and things of that nature. So we want to make sure that we're doing that as well. And we've also seen that folks in other states who have implemented community solar, they typically save 10 to 15% on their energy bills, so it's cheaper. And again, the exciting news is that these two bills are having a hearing on Wednesday. And so if all goes well, those could potentially be voted out of committee and be before the House floor for a vote of the whole. And so I strongly encourage everyone on this call to contact their state rep in particular, since it's in the House right now, and their state senator as well, to encourage them to support these bills. And also, because it has a hearing on Wednesday, and this kind of goes back to Debra was saying earlier for how you can communicate and advocate to some of your representatives. There's this process that you can do in the State House, which is to submit a comment card in support of or opposition to any legislation. And so the way to do that, and again, I can put this in the chat in a bit, is to email the clerk of the committee. And so the clerk's name is Melissa Sweet, and you just include, and I'll put all this in the chat, the bill number, your position, which in this case would be that you support the bill, your name, and who you're representing. So you could put in that your name and you're representing yourself, or you're representing Turn Oakland County Green, and you just want to put in that you support the bill. And those will actually be read into the record during that hearing, showing that there's wide support of the bill. So the more people who do that, the more support it shows. So because those bills are up really soon, I encourage everyone to do that. And the very last thing that I just want to touch on is that we have a lot of money right now sitting in in Lansing from the federal government, from our American Rescue Plan dollars. And we're still working on a plan to distribute that money. And there is a effort right now, a strong effort to try to push to use a lot of that funding to invest in infrastructure around climate resiliency. And I encourage, again, everyone to reach out to their state rep and their state senator to let them know that you think that that's a really important thing to do. And so there is a $5 billion plan right now that would do a few things. It would create a climate resilience corps, which would be a job training and apprenticeship program focused on sustainability and resilience projects, including hazard mitigation and adaptation plans. There's a disaster relief navigation program that's designed to help people who are struggling with navigating disaster assistance and other emergency relief support systems when we do have natural disasters, unfortunately, that continue to happen. And there's also requirements for redundancy planning for some of our transportation pipes and other power sources. There's funding for a adequate disaster alert system. And as well as, and this is something that I think is critically important, planning and asset management policies that require new infrastructure to be designed to avoid and minimize flood impacts, help separate sewer and storm systems, which is a huge issue in Oakland County, especially Southern Oakland County, where I represent. And encourage local governments to do exactly what you guys are talking about doing right now, which is develop climate resiliency plans and deal with those issues as they happen. And so the folks, that's happening right now in the Senate. And so if you're interested in voicing your support on any of those pieces of legislation, definitely contact your own personal state rep or state senator, and as well as the committee chairs of both the education committee for the environmental literacy bills and the House Energy Committee for the community solar bills that are up on Wednesday. And again, sorry mine wasn't as flashy or exciting, but I really hope that you get involved in that, because that's stuff that's happening right now, and we're really hoping that we can help get some of those bills across the finish line.
Thank you so much. I will definitely be reaching out to some of those representatives, including Mr. Camilleri. Yes. So now I want to open it up to our audience to submit their questions for our panelists. You can put them in the chat, and please specify if you would like all the panelists to answer your question, or if you have a question for a specific panelist. I see that Mr. Miller put one in the chat for Mr. Barclay. Yes.
Sure. The question was our project controversial? I'm going to say no. We got early support from our school and from the West Bloomfield Educational Foundation. However, it was amazingly and surprisingly difficult to actually get it instituted. I will tell you that institutions, the way they are, it's just a fact of life. They are very happy with the status quo, and it is, trying to get them to change is a little bit like, turning the evergreen in Suez Canal. But just by continually working and having students speak to the board on several occasions, really what made the difference when we finally figured out a way to do it for free. And it did actually, they didn't hear us the first couple of times we said that, because people are really stuck in a 2009 mindset where, okay, we can't afford any more money than we're currently paying. And we said, no, this is going to be cheaper. But see, we can't afford the installation. No, we're telling you this is going to be cheaper. It's all paid for. It's all done, but we can't afford the installation. So you really got to, be persistent in explaining this thing. And, that's just the way it's got to be done in general with these large institutions. So don't be surprised with pushback from unexpected sources. It happens a lot, even when you're trying to do the right thing. And it's a great deal for education. People need to be made aware of what's currently happening and convinced. Sad that even when it's cheaper, people still have to be convinced.
Thank you so much for that answer. Do we have any other questions? If not, I have one for all of the panelists, and we can just go in whatever order. What facing?
I would say it's that solution and the service, and also and social studies and energy doesn't quite fit anywhere, but a little bit everywhere. And so we've got a lot of energy illiterate people. I would say that's probably not the biggest issue. The biggest issue is that you've got companies that are making money off of dirty fuels, that are spreading bad information under surface organizations that sound like they're, US patriots, and they're not. They're harming us. And so we really need to call them out, to be educated, to check your sources, to understand that we can meet our needs. In 2012, the National Renewable Energy Lab put out a study showing that we can meet the science-based targets by 2030 for making our electricity from renewable energies and reducing our greenhouse gas emissions with already existing technology that is, as Joshua showed you, is cost effective. So it's really knowing the solutions are there and get moving. Don't be complacent. Business as usual won't work. So I know that change is uncomfortable for people and it can feel overwhelming. I don't even take a project on nowadays unless it makes me nauseous. If it doesn't make me nauseous, it's not big enough, right? We've got to go for bold change now and we can have fun doing it. So whether it's, Sunrise or your local school district or getting involved in state politics, I really think that's crucial. If you don't know where to start, in addition to using what Regina just put into the chat, go contact the Sierra Club. They had a virtual lobby day last week in the Sierra Club chapter where I live, and they can show you how to do this work so that you can be an engaged citizen for the future and get the solutions that we need. So maybe the biggest issue is don't sit in doom and gloom. Get involved in solutions.
I will also say that one challenge is current legislation that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Right now, there's a 1%, DTE has a 1% limit on how much renewables you have to put on, that you can put on the grid. Why? There is no scientific reason whatsoever that it should be limited to 1%. Another issue is that one of the reasons that we ended up choosing 20 kilowatts is because we were limited to 20 kilowatts if we wanted to get net metering for our project. So these are things that we have to, especially on the state level, we have to take care of and just basically remove the obstacles to doing what is right and what is cheapest for the ratepayer. Why does DTE use 50% coal when solar is much, much cheaper? And using distributed generation is much better for the grid because it keeps down log jams on the grid and it provides more sustainability to the grid. Why are they opposing that? You got to look at where the money goes. So, I'm not going to go into specifics about it, but we do need to take action on the state level. We have to pressure our electric utilities and the Michigan Public Service Commission, let them know that we want the cheapest energy, which is right now solar.
I agree with all. Companies also with and it's really hard. It's really hard in Michigan to in Lansing, in politics, to push that because there is so much pushback because exactly what you said, Mr. Barclay, follow where the money goes. And so being more involved in the political process and seeing where people stand and showing up and honestly getting more involved in elections is going to be a really important part in addressing that particular issue in Michigan. And I will say that lending your voice is super helpful because it's not just, you may be sitting here thinking like, well, this is great, but we're just students and like maybe people won't listen to us. Your voice is super powerful and people will listen to you. And the reality is that most people don't speak up and most people don't make noise. And so the more people and the more that you can advocate and make sure that your voice is heard, the more powerful it is. That there are a lot of powerful economy driving businesses throughout Michigan that are also annoyed with and fed up with our energy issues, that are also pushing for some of these changes. And so I think, making sure that all of our voices are united around asking that energy in Michigan, that we focus on making sure that we are providing energy that is sustainable, that is reliable, and that is affordable, should be something that we're all saying, everyone from every student who's listening on this call, teachers, just regular people, community activists, but also leaders in business and other folks who just care about making sure that we are dealing with climate change, but that we are also making sure that we are providing energy that's affordable and that we can, as climate changes, that we don't have to, wonder, are we going to be able to turn the lights on if it's thunderstorming out? Is our power going to be restored within a week or less? And so that's all really important. And I think ensuring that we are getting that message out and making sure that everybody, knows that they have a role to play is really critical in that.
Thank you so much for all of your responses, Mr. Barclay. It looks like there's 2 questions in the chat for you. The first one is, what percentage of the school's entire electricity bill is the solar system providing?
Okay, great question. I'd have to do the actual calculations to figure it out. My just pure guess would be maybe 5 or 10%. One technique that I found helpful was the idea of, we're going to try to power our science department with solar. You might just, if you're a teacher or administrator or a parent in a district, you might just say, can we power one lab with solar? Really, you're not connecting anything to that specific lab. You're just connecting your solar energy system to the school. To offset the energy use of that room or that class or whole department, then you are really powering that department effectively. So it was a small fraction. I'm going to say 5 or 10%, maybe less. I could give you that. I could follow up with the exact specific value if you'd like. But we were pretty much limited by what we could get with net metering. Again, just to follow up on what Regina was saying, really we can have a major effect on state government because many of these laws that are preventing us from instituting solar are local, and some of the we can actually have an outsized influence on those bodies. The Michigan Public Service Commission, hardly gets anything from the public. I will say, so if we focus on them and focus on, our own state legislators and say, hey, here's what we think, they know that in the federal, that's where I believe we can really have.
I believe that was James' question, so I don't know if that covered everything for you. Looks like it's good. Okay, so the next question is, did the subject of electric school buses come up in any of your conversations?
I discussed with the transportation department at the time. Want to simply because of the reliability of vegetable oil power. I can attest, yes, some reliability issues. Electric buses are still not to mention the reduction, the on toxic for kids. So it did not come up specifically, but as the technology progresses, especially in the next 5 years, we're going to have an explosion, a good kind of explosion of electric vehicle production right here because of Tesla, who are really great. There are currently electric power buses. I think
One thing about climate change, coal to solar, we're talking about moving from gas powered cars to electric cars, all of these things that are happening. A lot of people just simply are fearful because it's different, because it's changing, and they don't know what that's going to mean for them, and they don't know what that's going to mean for their community. They don't know if that's going to affect their job. And they're just, because maybe they don't have enough information, they feel afraid. And because of that fear, they automatically think that they're opposed to it. So I think having these conversations in a way, if you're talking to somebody from another field, I think approaching it from a way of trying to like where they're coming about it, about how it can actually help things. A huge factor for everyone, and nobody, like, people hear solar and they automatically think like, oh, that's going to cost more. And just like Mr. Barclay pointed out, no, it doesn't. It actually costs less. Even if you are paying for the upfront investment, which you just pointed out, you don't even technically have to do. Ultimately, you're going to be saving money. But again, folks don't necessarily know or understand it. Their other concern is, well, might not be reliable. I want to be able to depend on my energy. I want to make sure that if I turn the lights on, that the lights are going to turn on. And so, talking about the reliability of the energy source and how it can help enhance and strengthen our grid is also really critically important. So being ambassadors of this and messaging about it, I think, can help. And then also, if you know folks who live in communities with reps who aren't as friendly to these ideas, asking them or talking to them and seeing if they would be comfortable reaching out to their reps. You can always reach out to a rep that isn't in your district, but it's always more impactful if they hear from people in their district. So reaching out and organizing into some of those communities is really important. This is a group for Oakland County. Oakland County is represented by Republicans, and then Oakland County is represented by Democrats. Oakland County is represented by folks who are more on our side of the issue with this and folks who aren't there yet. And so doing outreach into those communities and helping raise awareness, making sure that they understand this, understand the importance of investing in solar, and they understand the importance of addressing climate change. And that can help in order to build some of that, both that awareness, but also kind of break down some of those myths and concerns that people have, and hopefully help move folks in the right direction in those areas. And hopefully that answered your question.
Thank you so much for responding to that question. So our next question is for Debra Rowe, but the rest of the panelists are welcome to answer as well. The question is, I am an environmental educator who works with pre-K through 8th grade. I find that when I try to teach the R's, it's the adults around me who are the biggest roadblocks. So many times when I push for reducing, I have students come back to me and tell me that they don't need to reduce because they recycle. How do you manage coworkers and students' parents who have bought into the recycling will save the world mantra?
I think it's a really good idea to put together, and the students can help you do it, a one-page facts sheet on how recycling does not fix our pollution problems. There's lots of different ways to approach that. I think you can also share, there's wonderful teaching activities through the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and it's emf.org, about how we need to build a circular economy. We know that our recycling system in our country is fairly broken. We offshored a lot of our recycling, and now other countries are saying we don't want your stuff. And so it's just a false narrative that recycling fixes it. Give it to your students as a research project. Let them put it together. Then let them go home and talk to their parents about it. But I would also have them maybe give them an assignment that says, you go home, answer your parents' questions, and we'll come back and we'll talk about it. We made a mistake with environmental education a few decades ago, where we taught recycling in elementary school as if it was the be all and the end all. And it was just not complete, and in some cases accurate. So it's, yes, of course we have to be educating the public. Now I got to tell you something, and any teacher can do this. When I first went to Oakland Community College and I said, I think you got to start a program in renewables, they to me, you know, we're thinking about doing that. Why don't you go offer some classes? If you can fill the classes, then we'll look at giving you a program and offering you tenure. So I was motivated. And I went to the big, it was WWJ at the time, still a big radio station, right? 9:50 a.m. And I said, connect me with your newsroom. And they did. And I said, I've got a news story for you. And they said, what? I said, I can tell your listeners how to reduce their bills and how to reduce their pollution at the same time. And I bet your listeners would be interested in that. And I have a list of 101 low cost, no cost ways to reduce your utility bills. You can find it, just Google it. I've been teaching with it for decades. And so, and by the way, it's not enough to just do a little bit of reduction in our bills now. We've got to do deep decarbonization. We've really got to do those science-based targets so we can help to stabilize the climate. But anyway, so I went to them and they said, oh, this sounds like a good story. So they would put me on the radio, and I became the energy doctor on the radio station even before I had a doctorate. And every time I would give a little story, I would also say, oh, and we're having an open house at the college. And so people would come out and they would see we had 8 different types of solar PV panels. We had 4 different types of solar hot water heaters. We had a organic garden, we had permaculture, we had year-round food production in the solar greenhouse. And so people would see this and they go, oh, wow, this is so cool. And I'd say, yeah, we've offered classes. So come on and take the classes. That's how I filled my classes. And I educated the community at the same time. And so I even have a movable trailer that I've used to go to different sites that, you know, the students helped design, and then we used it to educate the community. Whenever you are teaching, not just your students. And in fact, works in Detroit has this program where they turn the Detroit students into energy ambassadors. So they go out and they educate their community. And then you give students an opportunity to be change agents for a sustainable future, build that resilient self-concept of I can make a difference in the world. And if we don't do that in education, what are we doing, you know? So that's my short answer to your question.
I just want to throw in really fast and very briefly, because I think Debra touched on this, and it's a really important point, which is that when you teach about reduce, reuse, recycle, when you teach about why pollution, why like throwing litter is bad, all of that's really important. But all of that is individual based and individual action based. And I think it's really critical. And even younger kids, you know, obviously can't get into as much depth as you can with older kids, but talking about how this is a systemic issue that is, you know, individuals are part of it, but so are larger governments and corporations and businesses and communities. And it's about like working together to change these systems and not simply focusing on the individual action. The individual action is important, but you are not going to fix everything unless you're also, you know, trying to create larger systemic change within it as well.
Mr. Barclay, do you have anything to add?
I have one thing to someone asking a resource in Detroit, and I believe Debra, ecoworksdetroit.org. Fantastic organization. We worked with them with our Bog School project. They provide resources and actually materials so that that kids the link.
Thank you so much for all of your answers on that question. I think it's really important to sort of reveal the sort of false narrative behind recycling, because I think that's especially what students get pushed towards when we tell them to do something about the climate. And I'm glad that there are adults here who are willing to help, take that down and get us going places. So I think another question for Debra, Rowe, which Mr. Barclay touched on briefly. So I work in the city of Detroit for Audubon Great Lakes, and one of my areas of interest is identifying pathways for youth from the city to connect to green careers. In addition to college-based pathways, I would really love to learn more about those that do not necessarily require a college degree. Do you have resources to share or pass along? And they're specifically thinking of certification programs for people 18 to 24-ish years old.
I'm not sure why there's the other than college. I mean, why not college? Community college is one of the best deals out there. It's really cheap. You can oftentimes get Pell Grants that'll not only cover your tuition and your books, but your living expenses too. And you can get certifications so that within, 2 semesters, sometimes 1 semester, you've got a certificate to go work on heating systems or cooling systems, and you understand more about how to make them more energy efficient. So there are some great programs. Henry Ford's got a program that deals with renewables and energy efficiency. And Macomb, I think, used to have a program. I think they still do. St. Clair does, and Detroit too. What's it called? Wayne County Community College. I know the last time I checked they did. So you can go for other certifications from other sources, but they oftentimes don't come with the scholarships. I mean, you could look into Youth Build. You could look into programs come and go depending on the funding sources. Detroiters Working for Environmental Justice used to have a program. I don't know if it's still going on, but the community is where and there it's been there for decades. You can also learn online. So, I know Solar Energy International, which is just solarenergy.org. They've got part of their thing is free online. There's so much that's out there. Look at Coursera. You can pick things up there. But let me talk to you about how to get a greener sustainability job for a second. In terms of getting green, and please look into apprenticeships. What a great deal. You get to work for a company, get paid for learning. Yes, you may have to brush up on your math skills. So what? Go get a tutor. Go to the community college. They have free tutors in math. And then you end up with a really good paying job when you go into the trades, and nobody can outsource it. So thank you for bringing up the apprenticeship piece. IBEW has apprenticeships, sheet metal workers. There's a demand now for people in the trades. But let me go back to how you get a green and sustainability job. People think, well, I've got to get the credentials, and then I go apply for a job that exists online. But really what happens is that's only one of sustainability job. And there are 2,000 new degrees in sustainability, which I'm proud of that we create. Live buildings who understood how to help people reduce on their energy bills. And they said, you don't have to pay me a salary, just pay me half of what I save you. I will tell you ways to reduce your utility bill, just pay me. So downtown, there was a big hotel, and the guy walks in and he says, you've got your exhaust fans on 24 hours a day, even when nobody's in the ballrooms. Turn them off. You're throwing conditioned air that you paid money for outside and then having to recondition it. Just turn them off. Nobody's in there. They did that, and he made $10,000 off of that, just one suggestion. And that built into this whole career area now called energy manager. So that's one way, is to be an entrepreneur. And there's lots of jobs out there that we need to create that don't exist yet, that are related to climate solutions and sustainability. But here's the other one that I really like. Take any job and bring your awareness of climate solutions and of sustainability to that job, and seek out other people who care about the environment too, or who care about social justice, or both, and meet together and talk together. And then you look for leverage points for change within the organization. So maybe you start the green team for the company, or maybe you end up with just a tips sheet for how to be less polluting, or how to create a healthier work environment. And then before you know it, you may end up being that person who gets motivated, who gets, promoted to be the sustainability director, or to be the captain of the green team. So you can bring a sustainability lens to any job. Don't fight just for the jobs that say sustainability or green in their description. Bring your awareness, your commitment to any job. And then there are things you can do, right? Understand the formal and informal power structure and influence. Who influences who? Seek out people who have influence and say to them, you are in a unique and important position to help create a healthier future in this company. I've got this idea. I can't imagine doing it without you. It's what I call my 2 magic sentences. So if you were going to go about doing this, how would you do it? Not do you agree with me, just if you were going to go about doing this, how would you approach it? And then when you do that, it really helps to influence other people. Oh, I talked to so-and-so and they suggested we do it this way. So there are these great strategies for how you create organizational change and societal change. Dig into those, learn them. And it's a lot about building relationships with people and empowering others to see themselves as helping to make a better world. It's a really great space to live in for a career. And as I say, go to uspartnership.org, click on resources, then higher ed. You'll see the article I have about that. Or also put in a link to a UNEP website where we have a global guidance document that goes into all of this in much more detail.
I'd also like to add that for non-college based programs, if you go to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, you will find that 2 of the fastest growing jobs in the United States are wind service technician and solar photovoltaic installer. These are the fastest growing jobs, and generally do not require college for that, even though you can probably, I'm sure that Debra can probably speak more to what programs at your community college might be good for those, but the jobs are out and are growing faster than other jobs.
And I want to throw in too, just to plug, I know we mentioned apprenticeship programs, and I just want to do, and Debra did a good job doing a plug as well for our a lot of the labor partners in this. You know, I always told my students, and I continue to tell any group of students that I talk to who are interested in going to into these sorts of fields, to seriously look at some of these labor apprenticeship programs, because you will, that's not only great for addressing a lot of our, you know, bringing more people into some of these jobs, these greener jobs, but these are jobs that are very high paying jobs, that are secure jobs, that provide students with a very high level of skilled training and expertise that they in a really controlled and supervised environment. So definitely there's lots of programs in Detroit that Debra mentioned, like the IBEW. There's also the as well. And so if you know students who are interested in them, helping them find access some of those labor partners as well be a huge benefit for them.
Okay, thank you so much for all of your answers to those questions. Unfortunately, is all the time we have for tonight. We will be wrapping up our webinar. I want to thank our audience for coming and asking such wonderful questions, and a really big thank you to all our panelists tonight. I learned so much, and I had a lot of fun while doing it, and I'm sure everyone else did as well. We are going to be sending out a follow-up email with all the resources that we shared tonight, along with the contact information of our panelists. Yeah, thank you for coming, and have a great night, everybody.